Everyone has the right to education regardless of race, socioeconomic status, or anything else for that matter. However, this cannot be done without proper school funding. There are nearly 50 million students in the U.S. public education system from kindergarten through high school. The U.S. spends approximately $10,000 per student each year, which adds up to $500 billion total. It is important for us to know where that money comes from, where it goes, and if it is being spent efficiently. In his 2011 TED Talk, Bill Gates states, "If we make the wrong choices, education won't be funded the right way." Gates, 2011.
Lack of funding greatly impacts the services and resources that schools can provide for their students. When there are urban schools that receive poor funding that have a large enrollment of students from low-income families, it leads to overcrowded classrooms and either not enough resources or outdated resources. These students will not receive the attention they need or deserve. Many of the students will go on in school underprepared and need to play catch-up at the secondary and post-secondary levels. Improper funding left these students disadvantaged due to lack of access to resources and opportunities compared to students at other schools that do get proper funding. Opportunities are even more scarce at the university level because of tuition levels and decreasing financial support. IKPA 2016.
Funding in U.S. school systems create huge disparities in the quality of school buildings, facilities, curriculum, equipment for instruction, teacher experience and qualifications, class sizes, presence of auxiliary professionals, and other resources. Biddle, 2002, paragraph 11. It might come as a surprise to many U.S. citizens how these inequalities are not tolerated or allowed in other countries around the world.
In other countries, funding is equally distributed to all schools, whether in rich or poor areas. All funding is distributed based on a number of students enrolled in need, not by local wealth income. Poor and minority students always face challenges that their wealthier peers do not. And all around the world, they tend to have more difficulty with education due to lack of outside resources. However, in the U.S., it is apparent that these students suffer even greater problems because they have to attend poorly funded schools on top of that. Biddle, 2002.
School funding is an ongoing problem that has been faced for over a century. We found this timeline on the League of Women website while we were conducting research on the federal government and their programs offered. This timeline provides the major federal programs that have been created for early childhood up until 2010. Some of the key programs that stood out to us include Head Start, which was the first program created in 1965. Its purpose was to support low-income families by offering free early education. Another program called No Child Left Behind was created in 2001 to support the ideas of Title I, to fund programs like preschool and early childhood. This program was implemented to prep students with the language and reading skills that they need to be successful when they enter school. Over the course of time, however, these programs have changed and not all exist today. LWB 2011.
In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, in the attempt to help national issues related to poverty. This has been the most widespread and extensive federal legislation affecting education that has ever been passed by the United States Congress. Within this act was Title I, which was created by the United States Department of Education, which provides additional funds to school districts to assist low-achieving students, especially in high-poverty schools. It works to improve student achievement, staff development, and parent involvement. This federal funding is not to take the place of state support, but rather aid to current funding. U.S. Department of Education, 2004. In 2015, Obama signed Every Student Succeeds Act, which replaced the former act known as No Child Left Behind. This is the reauthorization of President Lyndon B. Johnson's ESEA Act from 1965.
According to this pie chart, the majority of K-12 education funds rely heavily on state aid. The chart shows that 46% of the school's revenue comes from the state, while local governments provide another 45% and the rest from federal government. Census Bureau 2015. As reported by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, each state in the U.S. has their own formula for distributing funds to schools. Some states choose to give funds to districts with the higher student need, like those that come from low-income families and schools that struggle to raise funds from tax and other revenues. CPBB 2016. Although the Great Recession hit back in the early 2000s, local funding for schools has yet to recover, and this creates a burden on the overall impact on statewide funding programs. After completing a survey from 45 different states, 31 of those 45 said that their state funding was lower in the 2014 school year than back in 2008, before the recession even took place. CPBB 2016.
The Illinois State Board of Education, ISBE, has opportunities for school, administration, and educators to apply for grants. The ISBE has created a Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. This was put into place to ensure grants are being properly evaluated while being selected. This limits the chance of fraud and works to keep grant selection as fair as possible. Although the ISBE has been assisting legislators in the review of the system of distributing state education funds for years, there are still issues with the funding system, ISBE 2016. When schools are not properly funded, classrooms are not provided the best materials to aid teaching. In a heavily technology-based society, many schools use technology to aid and support teaching. However, without proper funding, this is very difficult. According to the National Report Card, by offering competitive wages, schools are able to ensure teaching jobs remain desirable. However, schools with poor funding struggle to attract and retain high-quality teachers. Without quality teachers, students may not be receiving the best education possible. Baker, Berry, Lum, and Skara, 2016.
As we furthered our research on this topic, it was important for us to find pros and cons on this issue to see how it can be effective and how it hurts local and state governments. According to the League of Women Voters organization, a pro for increased federal government on this issue is that it provides equal education chances for all students in the United States. This will provide more consistency for all school districts and states. However, when schools are not properly funded, it challenges them to be smarter with their money. Schools would have to be more frugal and find more efficient ways of using the money they are given. If we are spending a large sum of money on something that is unnecessary, they can rearrange the budget to find a more useful way to distribute this money. Coleman, Walker, Lawrence, 2011.
When school funding increases, that money often comes from programs that assist students with special needs. Students and families rely on these programs to help close the achievement gap. Also, low-income families rely on resources and programs such as free breakfast and after-school daycare. These budget cuts in school funding increase the cost for parents who already may be struggling financially. Cutting such programs also fails to support the idea of creating an equal opportunity and quality of education for all students. With more emphasis on rigorous academic standards, the demand is growing to educate students and prepare them for post-secondary education. In order to do this, there needs to be a drastic narrowing, if not closing, of achievement gaps that exist among student subgroups.
A number of programs currently are attempting to improve the quality of public education, particularly in poor school districts. Vouchers give parents a set amount of money to help pay for better education for their children. This money can be put toward public or private school that the parent thinks will provide the best education for their child. Charter schools provide parents with an alternative choice in a standard public school, but they are still publicly funded.
We feel it is extremely important that schools are properly funded. There will always be students that have more funding than others, but there should be a system implemented to ensure that schools are provided with appropriate funding to succeed. We know many teachers that use their personal money to purchase resources for the classroom because their schools cannot fund enough. School funding is such an important issue that needs to be recognized and addressed in U.S. classrooms.